Lisa, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you and see you.
Fantastic. Okay, welcome everybody. This is our Laws and Rules Committee meeting. February 15th at 6:30 p.m. Hopefully everybody has an agenda. Everyone here from the Laws and Rules Committee is here except for Alderman Carl Frankel, who did mention he didn't know whether he would be here or not, but we're fine, we have enough to, in case we need to vote on anything. You want to do introductions? The mayor is here, Mayor Steve Noble, and that. Jen Kelsey, yeah, Jen Kelsey, did I say it right?
Yes.
Yeah, hey. Assistant Corporate Counsel, Dan Baker is here.
Mike Amato from Baker.
From, okay,
And Will Rock.
well, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I see Noble zooming in on us. Amy Groves, and our clerk is also here. And our Freeman guy. I'm sorry, I forget your name.
Austin.
Austin Powers.
Oh,
All right, so the first item on the agenda tonight is the memorializing resolution to approve an opt-out community distributed generation program in New York. Hi, Julie.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
You ready?
Of course.
All right, let's go.
All right. So thanks for having me. This resolution request is to ask the Public Service Commission to authorize opt-out CDG. Now, what I'm going to get to is what that means. So as you all know, the city of Kingston is part of a community choice aggregation program. We brought on Mid-Hudson Energy Transition last year to be our administrator. And in the past year or several months since we've contracted with them, we have been developing what that CCA program looks like. It is building out to be a diverse portfolio of securing renewable energy in a number of different ways for all of our residents. And we expect that we will be actually seeing our procurement of energy by later this year. However, one of the pieces of the portfolio that we feel is really critical is a function called opt-out community distributed generation, which is also known as opt-out community solar. It's basically a policy within CCA that allows us to automatically enroll all of our residents, including our LMI, low to medium income residents in our disadvantaged areas, into community solar programs, which inherent to community solar instantly gives them a discount on their energy and is renewable. However, this system, opt-out CDG, was permitted by the Public Service Commission and then was removed so that they could modify their procedures. And we expected that this would be reinstated, and it has not. And so it has not, even though we have been waiting for several months and anticipating that it was going to be reinstated, and we have been waiting to submit additional documentation for the CCA in order to proceed, but we're waiting for this to pass through the Public Service Commission and has not yet. And so the Mid-Hudson Energy Transition, another partner of ours, Power Market, and many other entities and other municipalities have formed a coalition called Opt-out CDG Coalition to basically advocate to the Public Service Commission that they need to reinstate this opt-out CDG. This would be an instant way for us to enroll all of our customers, regardless of income, into a program that would benefit everyone and the environment at the same time. And so the coalition is looking for a few things. They're looking for executive letters of support, which our mayor has signed on to and submitted to the Public Service Commission. And I included that in your packet. And they're also looking for letters for resolutions by the legislative branches in support of the community distributed generation. And doing so would basically, communicate to the Public Service Commission that this is an important part of our CCA program and other CCA programs throughout the state, and that it's really critical to move this forward. So that is generally what I'm asking. There's no cost involved in it. It's basically a letter of support, and it's basically an advocacy for a system that would be beneficial to our residents in terms of our CCA.
Hi, thank you. Any questions for Julie?
Move to adopt this legislation, more resolution.
Sorry.
I move that we adopt this piece of legislation.
Oh, okay. I thought you should be. All right, so is that a motion?
Yep.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The ayes have it. Thank you. What's next? All right, number 2, Mayor Noble, you want to come up and talk to
I'll
us?
start over here and then we'll here. Well, thank you all so much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about a project that has been discussed actually 2 years ago, so a year and a half ago, for the council. At that time, no action was taken, but we're happy to be able to bring this concept back to all of you for review. It's a little bit different this time, as I want to kind of go over, what we're proposing here with an apartment complex that, known here in Kingston as Stony Run to many people. And so I'll use that terminology for now, so that we all know kind of what we're talking about. But in essence, we have a property here in Kingston where we have property owners who have purchased that property, have made improvements to that property, and are now looking to transfer that property into a housing development trust fund, which is an avenue to which this property would be transferred to basically a nonprofit organization, and allow for the city to be able to ensure that they'll have long-term affordability at this facility for the next 40 years. And so it allows us to enter into a regulatory agreement which will restrict rents. And in the case of this building in particular, because of the Emergency Tenant Protection Act still being in place here, that all of the current tenants in that building receive all of the current ETPA protections currently in place, but we'll put a cap on, future tenants not being able to make more than 120% AMI, which aligns with our new zoning code in terms of workforce housing. And so our goal is to take this from being a market rate apartment complex and turning it into a workforce apartment complex. The benefits of this for us is that we are able to, keep the property on the tax rolls, and so there's no pilot being requested. They'll still continue to pay taxes, and we're able to, through the regulatory agreement, set up specific reserves so that capital improvements will be able to be in a dedicated account, and we'll know how much is going to be able to go into those accounts and allow it just really, for the next 40 years, guarantees that the property will not fall into disrepair, and that there'll be funding set aside there. In the end, I feel like it's a kind of a win-win for us. We're able to protect the tenants. We're able to take a property that was market rate and now turn it into workforce, and really be able to ensure that we have, kind of all different types of housing in Kingston, and that it continues to be a facility that caters to working families, which, has always been really the traditional role of Stony Run, and now we feel like this will allow it to continue to play that role. And so that's really my overview of this, and the folks who own Stony Run are here to be able to just kind of give maybe their overview briefly. They have a short presentation that they're going to show up on the screen, and then I'll be here to answer any questions, and then if there's other questions that maybe may come up, Dan's here as well. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and Elisa, if you wouldn't mind giving them the option to show a PowerPoint, that would be great.
Okay, who is it logged in as?
Will, Lisa.
Okay,
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much for having us. Thank you for your introduction. So I'll keep it very short. That was extremely comprehensive. Just share screen.
Yeah, and then you just have to, it should be at the bottom, and then it should let you pick which browser you want to share.
So just to kind of go through the history and chronology, as Mayor Noble mentioned, we started conversations, our first meeting on this was in May of 2020. We knew before we even were to get involved with this complex that the right thing for Stony Run has always been an affordability agreement. We tried to figure it out before closing, and unfortunately, it was right through the midst of when COVID hit. We had a very antagonistic diligence and closing process from the previous owner. And we ended up not getting it, unfortunately, accomplished before closing. But we continued the efforts. We went from the common council about exactly 2 years ago in March. And at the time, unfortunately, it didn't get much traction, and we moved on. We come to fast forward to today, ETPA is passed, and we're about 65% complete with substantial repairs on site. Basically, just cutting to the conclusion here, the only benefit to us as owners in this situation is access to true United States government affordable financing. So the US government does not consider ETPA to be affordable housing. It considers it full market rate. So we don't have access to HUD or Fannie or Freddie or any of the government programs to successfully capitalize improvements and financing of affordable housing. So what a regulatory agreement does is it allows the government to acknowledge the complex as true affordable housing, and you have access to financing programs, and essentially allows us to get out of our construction loan, which with rising interest rates is quickly becoming unsustainable. It's cut off basically current funding. So a little history of why we took on the project and what it means if we can't continue. We took on the project and we're local. We basically formed our company around this project. These properties were on the market by a notorious owner for years, trying to unload them. No one would take them on. We took on a Herculean task right into COVID, right through a tumultuous 2 years where we've had our share of struggles, but we've gotten through them, and I think things are looking brighter on the other side. Here's a quick visual of how it looked the day we took over. So this was 2 years ago. There were approximately 40 units that were uninhabitable, totally scrapped, unlivable. Within the first 3 months, we got all of these back online, livable. These were being held offline just for parts and to warehouse units. So the complex was basically run down. This is the common tennis court basketball area. To date, we've spent over $3 million from our loan, which has primarily gone to infrastructure upgrades, so HVAC. We've redone sections of the main sewer line, septic system, siding windows, doors, site work. It's really been and roofing. It's been primarily the non-visual upgrades that we put the first round of funding into, and then some of the apartments, about 160, 170 at this point in terms of repairing the apartment interiors. And through that time, so just in 2 years, we've had a lot of the resentment towards prior ownership was carried through. We've had an extremely difficult time staffing the property. We've gone through 6 property managers in 2 years, 4 site superintendents, 2 property management companies. Obviously, the COVID pandemic, collections loss, and the cost escalation just through inflation over the past few months. And 100% of all rent collected has been reinvested in the property. There has not been a dollar distributed or taken out from the property. And in the foreseeable future, there will not be. There's more than $1 million that remains. We originally thought the budget was going to be around 3 to 4. But as we've gotten through kind of our initial phase, there's still quite a bit that needs to be done. And the residents on site can attest to that. We're working with monthly meetings with the organizing committee to prioritize how the remaining budget gets spent. So this regulatory agreement, where we've landed, it's evolved quite a bit over the years, and essentially where we're at today is it preserves ETPA for all residents, it secures long-term affordability, and really we are just looking, and I'll get to that on the presentation, to show the government that we have a truly affordable complex. Some of the other benefits requires an income test to confirm those in need of being served. Right now you have, since we're in the middle of a construction project, you have half the units with higher income residents, half the units lower, potentially lower. So there's a mismatch, and we have basically a construction loan that's financing this. That's been cut off on us. So what the affordable financing will do too is it allow for reserves to continue through these property improvements. This is a snapshot of the application that we're waiting on from the Community Preservation Corporation. It's a Freddie Mac THA affordable loan, and it has a stipulation of a regulatory agreement being in place in order to access the government financing. These are some images of the site today, the common areas. We have a dog park, and we did the tennis courts and the playground, repairing bathrooms, kitchens, and common areas. And that's it.
Questions?
One thing that could you just mention that I think one of the things, the early steps that you also took was to kind of reach out to try to house folks with supportive housing. Do you want to talk about your relationship with Gateway a little bit?
Yeah, so Gateway's been an incredible partner. We've been on with them, they're actually giving us more units. So Sunnybrook works particularly well for the Gateway residents because of the garden level direct access units. So they currently have, I think it's around 25 units at the complex. So we have a master lease with Gateway for 50 units. They've slowly been moving residents in. It's subsidized housing. We also have Rupco units, we have Section 8 units, but Gateway is the largest community housing provider now in the complex, and we're working to get them up to their full 50 units.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, yeah, thanks for coming. I mean, we have spoken a few times, and I'm happy that this potential agreement has moved forward. I really care deeply about the Stony Run residents. As you may know, I worked to organize that first group of them, and now they are a tenants union, and they have this great organizing committee. I think it is a win-win. I mean, it's fabulous that we can maintain the rent stabilization provisions. And if I could, I'd like to just read Teresa Green, who I met early on campaigning there. She helped me break into all the buildings to meet people. she couldn't come tonight, and I know she's been a great help to both the tenants and to you to bridge some of the, differences or misunderstandings or dealing with so many changes in management companies and et cetera. Is it right to just read it? It's not too long.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot going on in Stony Run. She's very appreciative for meeting, all the meetings that you've set up with tenants. And really appreciate the effort that Acres put forward to create a more cohesive and interactive relationship with the residents. There's so much more work to be done to address the issues that are most pressing to the tenants. And she's been very pleased personally to read about Mayor Noble's recent and continuous addressing the housing emergency. And I'm just going to skim through it, but the whole point of we can't afford to lose that chunk of apartments for the city, and we're in such dire need. It is my hope that Acre Holdings continues to fight for affordable housing for the residents and meet the rent stabilization clause. She's been there for 17 years, seen a lot of changes, a lot of owners, management companies. Right now, it's really, I've seen a lot of changes, and one thing for sure is Acre Holdings bought a lemon, but it's been a real challenge. The infrastructural attention and work is crucial, and you're making a lot of progress on it. The rest is just thanking me about how wonderful I am. And she's hoping that we vote a yes for the mayor to work through this contract with Stony Run. There you go. And good luck tonight, and may God be with you, all of you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. I have a question. For those who may not know, could you just give me or tell me what is the difference between workforce housing and affordable housing? Because the terms are so interchangeable a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Workforce, technically, I don't even know if there's a clear definition because it's such a vast sphere, but I know for sure affordable housing is federally recognized as affordable housing. It usually has a HUD agreement in place, a regulatory agreement in place. There's a contractual restriction to rent, where workforce can be affordable or it can be market. There's a lot of market workforce housing. It's anything that's 120% of AMI or below, naturally. So.
okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yes. So with these, the limit here of the 120% AMI, that would only apply to future people who move in, right? But if there are people now who are living there, they're not going to be forced to move out, right?
Correct. They with ETPA, they can stay there forever under ETPA protections. They can also have secession rights where they pass it down to anyone who lives with them for 2 years or more. So it's the full ETPA resident protection.
Okay. And then I know that also the AMI, 120% AMI would also depend to a great extent on how many household members there are in your apartment. But we're talking at 120% AMI, $50,000, $60,000 of annual income, somewhere in there.
It does depend on between 1 to 8 people is the scale in the household. So HUD posts a chart every year essentially that has a formula of how you derive to.
But we're not talking about $150,000 of income and that level. We're talking about people who would be dental hygienists, secretaries, teachers, bus drivers.
Social security, disability.
Yeah.
or
So,
SSI.
well, because I want to give another picture, we can talk about numbers, but I think it helps for people to understand what kind of, jobs people would do to get that level of money. So we're not talking about bankers, we're not talking about, high-end lawyers. So.
Right, and it is depending on the number. So it'll be the more folks in the apartment, the less each person has to maybe it's divided up.
Right.
So obviously if it's one person, it's a higher threshold than a couple. And then a couple with a child, and then it gets. But the complex is mostly 2 and 3 bedrooms, so we rarely see single individuals.
And the term is 40 years, right? 40, okay. And then this is a question more for Dan Baker and the mayor, I guess. How portable is this type of agreement? In other words, is this something that other property owners of similar size and status, is this something that they can look at doing?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we would love them to. And we think that this is a really strong path forward for properties that, want to create this permanent affordability to take advantage of. And I think that that's why we want to have this public conversation about this, because we hope that others will take the lead and be willing to create this process. Because I think we've always heard from organizations like Repco and others who come to us that create these housing development trust corporations, or that's the right name, I don't know, something like that. Yeah, but we don't necessarily see a lot of private individuals taking advantage of the program, but in other places that is used a lot by private entities. And so, but these will be some of the first in Kingston to do it. But yes, very much so, we would appreciate others coming to us and really creating that permanent protection. So thank you.
And it runs with the land.
And it runs with the land.
Right.
So,
So any future purchaser would have to honor the agreement through the 40 years. Okay. Another question again for the two of you is more, what effect does this have in terms of gauging ETPA vacancy rates in the future? Would Stony Run still be included in any survey of properties that fit the ETPA requirements, or because of this agreement, would it now be taken out as a different type of property?
So, I mean, I can just speak briefly, maybe partially, but my understanding is that, so we, part of our ETPA rules, our emergency housing declaration, we've identified that once every 3 years, we're going to do a survey. And so in 2 years from now, when we start that surveying process, we will work with HUD. We will provide them all of our 6 family or more properties, and we will talk to them at that time, what are the rules and regulations about, what properties should be removed and not. And so that's our process. That's what we did this last time in terms of figuring out what properties kind of fit and don't. And so that's what we'll do. And so I guess I can't tell you today what they'll tell us in 2 years about this property in particular, but we kind of open it up to the whole playing field then and kind of whittle the list down based on, HUD's current rules and regulations around ETPA properties.
And then the protections that are set in place here, how would those relate to any future Kingston Rent Board rent rollbacks? We saw that the court, as I understand it, disallowed the particular rollbacks that the board set, but I don't think they outlawed all rollbacks, or did I miss that?
Yeah, so with the agreement, as we've stated, they will get all ETPA protections and programming. And so if the rent guidelines board decides to do a look back period back to 2021 and decides to do a rent decrease, these units will have to adhere to those, and as well as increases if in the future the rent board decides to go up 5% 1 year, these could go up as well. Is that sounds good?
Great.
Probably a question for 3 of you as well. Mayor, when you spoke earlier, you mentioned that it coincides with the rezoning. If there were changes to the rezoning law as it's written now, would that have any impact on this?
I think your current zoning, when we talk about affordability, I think we identify workforce at 120 and affordable housing at 80% or less. Generally will affect new units being built. And so if they decide to build additional units on their property, over 7 units or more, that would then trigger additional affordability clauses that would be above and beyond their current regulatory agreement. That would then have to comply with our zoning code. But our new zoning code won't affect current existing properties as built currently.
Okay. But what if there are some, like, I know we're still working on the rezoning. So what if there are changes made, like, could there be any changes done to the rezoning as it's written now that could have an impact on this moving forward?
In fact, I don't anticipate that to be the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I had a question, because I've been curious about it, the vouchers, the E-Shy, I think they're E-Shy vouchers, right? That's certain state,
For Gateway,
yeah.
Gateway Shot, yeah.
So how those work is it makes it so that Gateway can place people in Stony Run and they get market rent. Right? So how does that factor into the math of affordability and what the market rent is and all of that? So because there could be potentially 50 units and you're talking 60 units. How many does Repco have? Like,
Only a couple,
Couple,
3 or
Section
4.
I mean,
And
yes,
there's like another 3 or 4, Section 8, but
okay.
it's a good question. The master lease with Gateway is 2% annual increases. So I think we'll have to get legal advice of if the rent guidelines board does less than a 2% raise, if which one they're subject to. Because I do know that they have a separate master lease with the ownership entity. So I would think they'd still be adherent to what ETPA guidelines are if it's below 2%. But it's not going to be a huge difference either way between 0 and 2, because they're locked in for 5 years of a 5-year extension, all with 2% annual increases. That's the lease.
Okay. It's not like a landfill for you all. That's what I'm, you know what I mean? I was trying to figure it out over the months.
Yeah, I don't think it would jeopardize any of
Yeah.
the residents.
And then it's really exciting to hear other developments can take advantage of something like this, because I think in Ward 1, there were 500 units eligible for rent stabilization, but even more units and I've talked to owners about different things, and I think, yeah, maybe need some help too.
And if I could just add on that part, one of the things that the governor has proposed in her proposed budget is to actually really push out regulatory agreements and to be able to create a whole new regulatory agreement type program that's statewide that would actually encourage this and actually be, I think as I read it, actually even less stringent than what we're requiring right now of acre, to be able to actually create new affordable housing units. And so I don't know the specific language very well, but I know that they set some baselines about 20% affordable units in a market rate property could get someone a regulatory agreement similar to this. And so thinking about basically changing how they do these in the state to try to incentivize the private developers to enter into these more often to kind of create that affordability. We'll see how it goes. It's just a proposal. It's got to get through the legislature, but I think we are kind of ahead of the game here a little bit and really trying to promote these. And the state's kind of catching up to some of these new types of initiatives, even though it's been around for a while. It just takes clearly a willing property owner. And with not a lot of incentive, as was mentioned, like these guys aren't actually they're not making anything on this at all, right? All of this is getting kind of funneled back into the reserves and back into the program, and it becomes a nonprofit in essence. And so there's not many that are willing to do that. So the state is kind of creating a new program that maybe is a little bit more advantageous to developers to encourage folks to do it. But I just wanted to put that out there as that something new coming down.
Is that an article in the New York Times, like today or yesterday?
Yeah, I didn't read it. I would be
Yeah.
surprised if they're talking about it.
printed it
It's-
out.
It's part of the governor's housing compact is
I think
to
it's,
reduce by
it's great, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. What would the incentive be for private developers? Other than that, it would come nonprofit, that they would be eligible for some of HUD's financing and things of that nature,
Yeah, they basically get these
for
lower.
repairs and upgrades and things of that nature.
Just being totally candid, we were blown away that the government doesn't look at ETPA as affordable housing. Like, they were like, oh no, you don't have access to any of our financing programs. There's no HUD, there's no, like, so it's a huge advantage. Like, the whole reason why these financing programs are set up by the government is to promote affordable operations. They provide essentially subsidized financing just for affordable housing to allow for continued like lower rents. So the fact that you don't have access to that without the regulatory agreement, I think is why it's being expanded.
With the whole purpose of continuing having these properties upgraded, well maintained. In that perspective, to be able to fund these properties so they can stay affordable for a long period of time.
Right, keep people in their homes,
Yes.
yeah.
Not related to this, but a question Barbara brought in your answer. So gateway vouchers are obviously given to you and you said you wanted to expand that, but those vouchers are for current market rate.
So they're not vouchers, it's a new program. It's eShy has got, I forget exactly where the funds came from, but New York State got like a $5 billion allocation where they essentially did this eShy program and they gave out grants to organizations like Gateway it's essentially New York State subsidizing market rate housing. So it's market rate as of the day that they sign that lease, but then they are locked in for up to 10 years at 2% increases. So it's market rate, but then they're locked in at the 2%.
Sure, so I guess my question is, from your perspective, it sounds like it would be, is it more beneficial to receive a gateway voucher than it would be for a regular tenant or, RUPCO, Section 8, anything? Because I mean, like, their RUPCO units or Section 8 units are capped at a certain percentage, where it sounds like these gateway vouchers, you can get substantially more.
Well, they don't just take the rent. They're smart about it and they wait and they're very educated on the market and they wait for good opportunities to take it during off season. So they're usually getting good deals and they'll take 5 units at once. So they'll also get a little bit of a discount there. But where I think we assume that the 2% increase over time is going to be similar to where the rent guidelines were.
I think the biggest thing for us is that we know they're gonna pay rent.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
But other than that, it's like pretty indifferent, whether it's time or someone else, but I think with that program, it's, the government's paying rent on the behalf of the resident.
Whether someone's there or not, and they operate the unit. So when someone turns, they do painting, they have someone that lives on site. So they also operate.
They don't maintain buildings.
And how many units are does Gateway have?
So we have a master lease for 50, but we've only moved in, I think we're in the mid-20s, 23, 25. It's a long process because they have to go identify a person, they select the unit, it's usually 2 to 3 months out, they have a whole walk, they make sure it's handicap accessible, so it takes a while to roll everyone.
Okay. Well, I think it was great. And the letter says that you all approached the city about this, so thank you for doing that. You don't find too many people approaching the city to say, we want to some affordable houses, we want to build some, or we want to keep tenants in our homes. So I really appreciate that. And as well as you working with them. Any other questions or comments for? Questions, no? You have a comment? Well, are you ready for me to? So we have a resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a regulatory agreement with Village Prop Co. LLC and Kingston Workforce Housing Development Fund Corporation that would ensure all current tenants will receive all ETPA protections as currently in place in the city of Kingston for as long as the tenants reside at Stony Run. All new tenants will have to meet AMI requirements and all rents will be capped at no more than 120% AMI. I'd love to have in here also that regulatory agreement will prohibit this facility from being a market rate apartment complex for 40 years.
You could put that in.
Put that in there?
Yeah, you want to get a motion though, to you want me to read this?
Okay, so you guys, all right, with inserting that language?
Motion is.
Second, third.
Okay, so a motion to add language
Yeah,
to
the language.
the committee report.
Yeah.
So I can write that in, yes? You can write that in?
You power the pen.
All right, so I'm going to write that in, but then I can have a motion to accept it as written. Do that?
Yep.
Oh, get the right in first.
You don't believe that going around?
You could just attach, save.
I can say, as see attached.
Because I have.
I can attach the letter.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because it has everything.
So I'm going to write, as amended.
One small caveat, the lenders, the government warned us that they may need to put in one sentence that names them as the mortgagee. So I'm hoping that's not controversial. It just means,
No.
You might suggest expanding the MF zone in order to be able to establish more workforce housing.
Okay, so
He's
the
talking about the zoning.
zoning?
Yeah.
Unrelated.
Unrelated.
Okay. Okay.
To his own bubble.
Is it clear in the attached the letter?
Yeah, it actually says regulatory agreement will prohibit this facility from being a market rate apartment complex for 40 years.
Clarify as per attached letters on the mayor, from the mayor.
As amended, see attached letter. Okay,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
we'll figure it out. Just letter. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Who made that motion, I'm sorry? And who second? All in favor?
Wait, are we voting on the thing?
We voted here.
We have a discussion first.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
So I would just like to say, as a former resident of there, when the older property owners were there, just continue the outreach to the tenants to let them know that, you know, you guys aren't them. Because I still have a lot of friends that live there and they are still feeling the burn from the last one. And I know you addressed that earlier, but just kind of, you know, there's a lot of bitter people there that are taking it out on you from the prior people.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, the epiphany we had recently was, we meet now monthly to kind of all get on the same page of how to allocate the funds for the repairs, because what's tough is when you repair one roof, 6 need to be repaired, how do you prioritize that? So I think we have a system that works, and honestly, Teresa's running, she's the president of our Ukraine, she's doing a fantastic job.
She keeps everyone level. That is a big job. Those people in their organizing committee. Yeah. I wish she could read more.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, I'm gonna read this again. Okay. Authorize the mayor to enter into a regulatory agreement with Village Prop Co LLC and Kingston Workforce Housing Development Fund Corporation that would ensure all current tenants will receive all ETPA protections as currently in place in the city of Kingston for as long as tenants reside at Stony Run. All the tenants will have to meet AMI requirements and all rents will be capped at no more than 120% AMI. As amended, see attached Reed Bayer's letter relating to regulatory agreement prohibiting facility from being a market rate apartment complex for the next 40 years. Yes?
Hallelujah.
Sound okay? 400 years.
I won't be here.
I plan to be.
Me too.
So far, so good.
All right, so can I get a motion? Second, Barbara Hill, all in favor?
I.
Aye. And ayes have it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Matthew Andreas, you're up next.
We know you know the doing song.
Local law modifications to the code to the building enforcement statute. And Matthew, you want to talk to us about that?
So basically, it's not a modification to the actual enforcement statute. Well, it's basically a modification to our entire building code under section 172 of the city code. The modification, this was changed and adopted by the state last year and came into effect on December 31st of 2022. It is required that we do come into compliance with these other minimum state standards. In addition to bringing into compliance with the minimum state standards, there were a couple little changes in our building code. One of which had to do with basically our code enforcement officer being appointed by the chief of the fire department, which we have other standards which basically change that in other statutes, and now this is going to be consistent with that statute. So an additional thing was we had previously adopted a more restrictive energy code that under the proposed statute, when we refer to the energy code, we would be referring to both the additional restrictions that we adopted as well as just the state general uniform energy code. So,
Okay, just bringing it into compliance with our code, that's it, right?
that's primarily, yes. And then there's some minimal other changes again, so that it's consistent with other sections of.
Okay, questions? No? All right, so I'll read the committee report. Review and adopt a local law amending section 172 of the city code to bring it into compliance with the minimal standards for administration and enforcement of the Uniform and Energy Code, section 19 NYCRR part 12.3. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposers? No? Is that it? Okay, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Easy, like that.
For here, City Hall 2001.
All right, so next
Sounds
on,
like a weird number in there.
next on the agenda is the encroachment at Sea Deli. I don't see Dana Blackman.
I don't think we necessarily need to, I think.
We don't?
Sure,
Yeah,
I think it's take care of.
Today, do you want me to come back over?
Sure.
Whatever's easiest. So this
Can
particular.
you tell me what page this is in our packet?
North,
That one thing is so.
63.
63, great.
All right. So this is with regard to a parcel some of you may be familiar with, where Sea Deli used to be located on Broadway. This particular parcel, there was a structure built there many years ago, and the parcel had changed hands with several property owners over the course of 60 or so years, except it was, I guess, very close sales where they must not have done title searches or additional surveys. With the most recent sale that was being done by the current property owner, it was discovered that the building which is on the property, actually encroaches onto the parcel next door, which is city-owned, by about a foot out into the city-owned property. Let me just see, I know Dana wrote it down when he had the survey done, the exact square footage. But upon further research, apparently on the city-owned parcel, there was a structure as well, and it was a common wall. But then the city structure, the structure on the city parcel, was eventually demolished. And this wall, which is a wall for the other structure, basically survives to this day and is encroaching on the city property. So the sale cannot take place, title will not insure with part of the structure actually being on city property.
1.35.
Yes, and so it does not appear that that 1.35 square feet contribute any value to the city's parcel. And if anything, it potentially opens the city up to liability, given the fact that this property, should something happen with regard to that wall, the building is technically on city property. The city could be brought into any kind of action as a party, even though the city has no real control over that wall. So the request is that the city quit claim that small sliver of land to the parcel in which the building is primarily located.
104 square.
Yeah, total.
Yeah, so it looks like whatever the length of the building is, but it goes out 1 point.
Well, actually, under the description of the building encroachment at the bottom, it says being 104.9 square feet.
Yeah, so that's a total, which basically is the length of the building times the one.
Because the next page it says being 1,773.8 square feet. So it's basically 1.35 feet wide by however long it is. Do the math, and I guess the whole thing comes to, that's 1773. So it's basically a foot and a half over estimate for the length.
Are there any tax implications in this?
Well, I imagine the property could be reassessed, so choose, definitely as part of any kind of the city, quit claiming this strip of land, requiring that it be added to the deed and basically be made one parcel as opposed to just like a separate, individual strip. There was some discussion of, as part of an agreement, making it clear to the new purchasers that the city's parking lot next door is only to be used for regular business and that they can't store garbage dumpsters or other things there. Which I know the previous owners had occasionally been doing, and it would at times, affect the availability of parking in the city owned parking lot.
And that would be an agreement that the city.
Yeah, so as part of quit claiming it, the city, can have them execute an agreement, basically saying that they agree and understand that, that they're, the entire parking lot space is owned by the city and ultimately be used for public parking. No uses, including storage of, garbage containers by the adjoining lot.
And who are the purchasers? It says attached to the proposed letter to.
It's not here, is it?
No, I was looking for it, I didn't see it.
Well, let me see if I get it. Well, there's an email.
Who are we quit claiming to?
I'm looking to see. Is this? Mayor's letter attached.
Those were the old one.
Yeah, I think that's the current.
I don't know why this wasn't there. This is is this in the agenda versus I'm the attorney for 654 Broadway LLC? He's currently in the contract purchaser. Does that sound familiar? I don't think it is.
It is. The first thing on this is basically Janet to Matt from Dana.
Right, so Dana is representing
Short
the.
letter is probably.
He is the attorney for the purchase.
Right.
So who you're looking for, the name?
So it's not, is it? Oh. So who's Whitaker?
Whitaker's this.
654 Broadway LLC from
This is from
Whitaker.
an email. So I don't think that's gonna be the agenda. The agenda is 63 and. But I don't know if I can not.
I mean, I don't know if it matters too much. I just wanted to know who.
Curiosity.
Yes, it would appear that the company that he's purchasing is 654 Broadway LLC.
Okay.
And it looks like that the primary member, which would be the primary owner of the LLC, is an individual by the name of Daniel Lewis Jr.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so, you want any questions in regard to this? I don't have a, committee report for this, so.
No, do you have blank ones? Did you pull out from? I could go
You're
grab them.
in.
Rita, there's blank committee reports in your office.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay.
I miss Sea Deli.
Yes.
It was weird to go in there.
Yes.
It was a whole portal,
I
but
will,
it was, those guys were really a trip.
I will hold my comments to the record.
Okay, yeah, well,
It's
but
been that little hole in the wall in the city for years. Mhm.
it was one of the, I'm gonna miss Market Basket, Sea Deli, a lot of really important businesses.
Yeah.
Fried fish, I mean, really, you know,
Thank you.
We'll probably need it for.
we'll talk later.
Yeah,
Okay. So, so the ask is basically having a resolution allowing the city to quit claim land. Let me see, I forget the person's name.
Well, you want it's 654 Broadway,
To quit
comma
claim,
LLC, and member Daniel Lewis Jr.
yeah,
There were like 9 attachments to the email, so I don't think all of them made it.
okay. Resolution.
The paper for this thing probably more territory than
Pretty much.
I would say you can try and make it broader, just quit claim it to the owner and then of that parcel. So whenever the.
To use the word order,
Yeah,
like
just use
654.
owner of the parcel because it may be, may make more sense, and I leave this decision up to people handling the closing to have the current owner it quit claim to them, and then when they do the sale, then they would draft a brand new deed, including a full description of both parcels. But again, I leave that up to them, so I think if you leave it broad, and then we can.
Okay, so, a resolution allowing the city of Kingston to quit claim to the owner of the parcel located at 654 Broadway, Kingston, New York, 12401. That's as simple as we can make it.
Yeah,
right?
and then just a brief description.
Of the parcel.
Just a description of the, reference the description that's attached by Dana, the 1 point whatever, but,
You want me to find that?
Um,
Or you
the
already have
title
it?
page.
I mean, I have the Schedule A, which is,
Yeah, I guess you could
The
reference
description
the
of the
survey, you know, as shown on the attached survey,
Yeah.
Schedule A.
yeah.
Anything about parking? Mentions.
Yeah,
Discussed.
it's up to you
Do
guys.
you guys want to put anything about the parking or just leave it at that?
I mean, will we get a chance to see that agreement?
Probably, I mean, we typically don't.
Don't, but regardless, the one aspect I know is a discussion, but they don't have any rights regardless. We can put in the agreement that they're acknowledging that they don't have that right. Ultimately, it really doesn't, it's not like they currently do have a right to put their, you know, garbage bins, where the previous owners were.
What do you all think?
Mike doesn't care.
No, I mean, like you said, it's city-owned property, they're not
Yeah,
allowed
they
to,
don't,
so.
yeah, they don't really have the right to do it anyway, so.
It's
Hopefully,
not-
that's not really hopefully, there's
Okay.
an enforcement that come into play, yes. Okay,
We're looking forward to it.
You got this?
yeah, all right, so I have a resolution before us, a resolution allowing the city of Kingston to quit paying to the owner of the parcel located at 654 Broadway as shown on the attached survey and schedule. Motion? All right, ready? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposers? Okay, thank you, Matt.
The next one before I get out.
You should be okay for now.
Thank you. Are you coming back for the, request for the purchase of?
I could do that.
All
Unless you
right,
want to.
Bartek, you're up next, Kingston Forward Citywide Rezoning Draft.
Hey, Lisa, if you could just let me share my screen, please.
I feel like we're gonna see a lot of you coming.
Yes,
It's okay with me.
pretty much for the next 6 months straight.
I am all part of things getting set up. I am working on those deep dive sessions for this and waiting to hear back. There's a lot of.
I'm having a root canal those nights.
Are we gonna be getting scuba things so we can dive deeply?
Sure.
Hey, Lisa, are you there by chance?
We,
You need to knock on the screen.
Yeah, I wish I could.
Lisa,
are you asking for Amy Bartek?
No, I'm asking for Lisa, the city clerk.
I'm sorry, what? I was in the other room.
Lisa, if you could just let me share my screen, please.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so I did want to acknowledge that joining us tonight is Amy Groves from Dover Coal, and then also David Gilmore from LaBerge Group, who are obviously intimately involved in the rezoning process and also tonight's agenda item. So tonight's agenda item is not relating to the zoning code itself. It's related to the seeker process, which New York State mandates that we do alongside the zoning code adoption. And what this requires us to do is to carefully examine the potential environmental, social, and economic impacts of the form-based code adoption. Now, this is not the first action that you've taken as it relates to seeker for the citywide rezoning. Resolution 58 of 2022, the Common Council declared itself lead agency for the project and determined that the project is a type 1 action. Resolution 59 of 2022, the Common Council determined that the project may result in a potential significant adverse impact and requires a positive declaration. And then in Resolution 116 of 2022, the Common Council adopted a final scoping document and directed the city and its consultants to create a draft generic environmental impact statement, or DGEIS, and that is the topic for tonight.
Good leaving.
Now, the purpose of the DGEIS is to discuss all of those potential environmental, social, and economic impacts, and all of the reasonable project alternatives. Now, the map for the DGEIS was what you had adopted in the final scoping last year, right? So you created the blueprint for us, and our goal with the DGEIS is to follow that blueprint, right? And take a hard look at all these potential impacts. Another aspect of the DGEIS is to also recommend possible mitigation measures that might be needed apart from the zoning code when it comes to potential impacts. So what does this draft DGEIS discuss? So it discusses potential impacts to geology, soils, and topography, plants and animal resources, water resources, open space and recreation, land use, the city's historic resources, socioeconomics, transportation and parking, consistency with community character, energy use, air resources and noise, community services and infrastructure, and then also consistency with other community plans that the city has already adopted. In terms of tonight's resolution, you are not accepting or passing this, but you are accepting it as complete in scope and content. What that allows me to do, and what it allows the city to do, is to open up a public comment and review period for this draft. And then also, I will circulate it to all of the interested and involved agencies for the project.
What are the interested involved?
They're listed in the scoping document.
And that's in here?
It's not in the communication for tonight, but it is listed in the scoping document, and I can share that with you.
Just curious,
There are surrounding towns, various state agencies, that's an excessive list. The water board, for instance, the planning board.
Is this on the Engage case, then it's its own? Is it the document in that?
Right, so this isn't posted to Engage Kingston yet, because I need the common council to accept it as complete in scope and content. So after the common council, if you were to pass this via committee tonight, then the common council passes it next month, then I would post this to begin the public review period. So that's a good transition. So I'm proposing that the comment period for this draft be March 7th to April 10th. And then I'm also proposing a public hearing on this on March 23rd. What we did with the scoping document is that I actually hosted the public hearing to collect feedback. So it doesn't have to be an official common council hearing, though of course common council members can join. But this would be the period and means by which we would collect any public feedback. And then of course, I would also be reaching out to all of the involved interested agencies to make sure this is on the radar for feedback. Once we receive all the feedback, we will come around and I will come to you with a final draft of this to actually pass. But for now, we're just accepting this. Now it will allow me to collect public feedback.
So it could potentially change
Yes.
after hearing the public
Yes.
comments.
Yes,
from
and
the-
the scoping document, we received significant amount of comments, and then, it did change between the draft and the final. So I expect the same might happen here as well. Before the committee discusses, David or Amy, is there anything you wanted to add? No pressure?
No, I think that was a good summary. I don't know, David, do you have anything?
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay,
And you're going to take care of scheduling the public hearing, just so it doesn't drop off my. Okay. And just let us know so that we can be,
With that, Would that be one that had a required?
We will not, that will not require quorum.
Okay.
Did I read your mind?
Well, I'm going to Costa Rica, so I need to know.
No, because that will come out of the housing
Yes.
department.
Right, that's great. Well,
And I assume they'll be recorded, so in case council.
Exactly, yes, and virtual in person.
Okay, great.
Okay?
And the involved and interested agencies will have until April 10th to respond? Is that what it will most likely be?
That's correct.
I'm sorry, you said that you would have a list of the interested agencies.
Yeah, I don't have, it's in the scoping document that we adopted last year. I can circulate that list again.
is the scoping document is engaged?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or discussions? No? All right, so the resolution is to accept the DGEIS draft generic environmental impact statement as complete in scope and content. Good enough?
Yep.
Good. Motion? Second? All in favor?
Discussion.
Discussion, any discussion, I keep forgetting that discussion because I feel like we discussed it already, but any discussion? No? Okay. All in favor,
Aye.
opposers? Okay. All right, fantastic, thank you, Bartek.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on.
Thank you.
I can talk about the next one, and if I say anything wrong, maybe Matt can jump in.
All right, this is the request for purchase of streets.
If we got a request from a couple of residents on West Chester Street to purchase a street. Jervis Avenue West, it's not currently being used as part of a paper street or the paper street of the state, so they have to purchase it, according to our process. All we have to do first is refer this to the planning department for them to put together a deed. So that's all we do, they'll put together a deed, present it to us, and that's all the results and goals committee have to do tonight.
So
We're just requesting the planning department to prepare the deed for the request to purchase a portion of Jervis Avenue West off West Chester Street. Do I need to put should we put the parcel number back?
One thing I would use, I would just make it a referral. Do you have the actual section of the statute? Because I just want to make sure, because.
Pursuant to City of Kingston, section 355-58. The number, are you typing that just to make sure?
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that the reading for the referral is consistent. Because the planning department will do a bit more than just drafting a deed. They will have to review surveys, possibly consult with not only engineering, but DPW, other things, just to identify other, water lines, other things that might be on a paper street. But I just want to make sure that the referral language is consistent with the statute.
The 355-58. It's a paper street, so it could go into Ohio Street there.
If Ohio.
Between Jervis and Ohio Street. Right now, it's.
Clarify.
That's just
One is a paper street.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm getting there.
sorry.
Okay, so, so that doesn't lead into any kind of city thoroughfare. Okay. All
It's
right,
a paper street, so we could actually tear down those trees and create that as a street, which was talked about in 2018.
What was it called?
yeah,
Say,
it's still
the
there.
neighbors on Ohio Street were really, really opposed to it. So we had a meeting with one people, that's when I was representing Ward 9, and we had a meeting with some department heads and opted not to do it, but I mean, that could happen.
Yeah,
I highly doubt it will.
But once we say this,
That will
then
happen,
it never
because
will
that
happen.
It never will happen.
Okay.
Basically, the ultimate result, if everything continued down the course, is these property owners would then be able to purchase a section of Paper Street and it would no longer be a city. But you're not agreeing to anything now, you're just agreeing to refer to planning to start laying down the groundwork. And I'm sorry, 355.58.
5.8,
Okay,
is that correct?
Yeah, you are correct.
I promise you don't have the whole code number, I just happen to know that one.
okay, so we're requesting the planning department to,
I would use the language is that that you direct the planning department
planning department,
to cause a deed description of said property be prepared by the engineer's office.
For,
Yes.
and put the parcel number,
Well, technically, it's not it's a street, so.
so the portion of Jervis Avenue west off West Chester Street. You get that?
Jervis Avenue,
Jervis Avenue west,
west, off of,
West Chester Street. West Chester Street?
okay. All right, so let me read this. So what we're doing, we're directing the planning department to cause a deed description of said property be prepared for the portion of Jervis Ave West off of Westchester Street. Yes? Okay. Any discussion?
Hey. Only on paper.
All right, there being no discussion, motion by Michael Barry, second. Bill. All in favor, opposers? Are none, so that passes. Okay. And one more item of new business, amendment to council rules.
Yeah, so there were 3 things that have come up recently that I'd like to potentially make some amendments to our rules. So you saw this, we could, did you see this?
Yeah.
You got it, okay. So the first one, this happened a couple of times where there's just a typographical error made on a resolution and we had to send it back to committee. We passed it out of council, then we have to do the process all over again, which government moves slow and then slowed it down even more. So this would give us, the clerk the opportunity to correct that without doing another at least 6-week process to something. So that would be added to Rule 5, which I could pull up, but I don't remember what that is. So it's the typographical or stenographic errors made on a resolution. The city clerk can make this correction without resubmitting it as a communication to the common council. So that's what I came up with. The only thing that I thought of, if you wanted to add, if you're good with that, I'm comfortable with that. If you want to just add with approval of the council president, just to make sure that we have our eyes on it. I don't know if that's necessary, but as I was driving, I thought about that. Or are you guys happy with this?
I like the extra little check.
The approval of the council president
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
or approval of Ward 7 Alderman?
Oh, no. Council
Is
President,
everybody okay with making that change then?
Council President.
Okay.
Because it would take 2 people to change something for the rest of it.
That's,
Yeah. And just because, it'll,
That's
So then it would read, if a typographical or stenographic error is made on a resolution, the city clerk with approval of the council president can make this correction without resubmitting it as a communication to the common council. It also just gives us a little, we know what's going on and what happens. All right, so that is the first one. The second one is what we talked about, I guess, with the redistricting. The way we've done it before, but it wasn't codified in any either way, was that committee reports could go to the full council, even if it didn't have the support of the committee. So say you had a motion and a second, but you only had, it was 2 and 3, it would still move forward. This would be changing that to say it could only move forward if it has a majority support of the committee. So I like that idea. I think part of why it was in the past was to give, say, who's not, Reddy's not on public safety, so if he put something in public safety and it didn't get passed, this would give him a chance of having, get the vote and come back. However, my thought of, Reddy has something that he really wants past the public safety, he should show up to public safety and make it.
I'm not showing up in public safety.
Or at least talk to your colleagues and get the support. The, issues that I foresee, like tonight, there's 4 people. So it could be 2 and 2. So what do you do then?
Can we talk about it?
Yeah.
So I would say if it's using today as an example, then we could put in there, a tie goes to goes to the full.
Well, a tie would to any vote, I would be the tiebreaker.
Oh.
But I'm not necessarily, I do try to make almost every meeting, but that is like one of my jobs, is to be tiebreaker. I've never done it, so that would be exciting.
I think we should keep it like that.
Then the
then
council
if you're
president
not
has.
Well,
Yeah.
if you're not here,
I mean, I think I'm here.
depending on what it is.
But I'm not in favor of this at all.
You're not?
No.
And this is what I've heard from council members, which is why I put it on here. I mean, it's okay either way. I think we should, whatever we decide should be in our rules, so it's clear. That is what I'm in favor of. Right now, we don't. So you wanna?
I think of 2 things. One is, it limits democracy. Because you can end up imagining, what if you have, much more of a split in terms of political parties. Then whoever is the president of the council can manipulate who's on what committee and could therefore reduce the number of people who are actually voting on even significant issues. So I like the idea of it being advisory at this level. Because that means that then the full council gets to really think it through and have further discussion. So it adds another layer too of consideration. The other thing is we've seen numerous times that people change their minds between the committee and the actual vote. And so that's why I think that it's really important to leave things there. I mean, I'm fine with codifying that and making it clear that that's the issue. But for me, and it's very, it's very rare we've got 2 different things that go forward from the same committee on the same issue. I've been here 8 years and plus, and that's the only time I've ever seen that happen. So I just think that it makes it much more open it provides for a much more democratic process if we require all things to go to the full committee. We do have the stop, which is if something only gets 1 motion and no second, then it's not considered. So there is that possibility, but that also has been very rare in my experience.
Yeah, like I said, I'm okay. I'm not advocating for this. What I'm advocating is for us to have something. Because in the redistricting process, this would have made me nervous.
Yeah.
Going through that. So then I was trying to think of like what, kind of like first amendment where we added with approval of the council president to give a little security, or trying to think of some security just in case something really were like that happened. But like I said, I brought this idea forward only because I heard a few council members speaking this way. Randy's the first one that I heard speaking the other way, so.
Yeah, I was in favor of it, because I always thought about, then what's the point of having the committee? And then, vote on something or not pass out of committee, but then it still goes to, I was looking at it from that viewpoint.
Like, sorry.
But Rennie does make a good point, though.
Yeah.
He makes a really good point about everyone being involved in this process, and it just brought me back to the CDBG with the advisory, not really
Right.
being advisory anymore,
Right.
but putting in all that work. So, and I don't want it to be like that, so.
Right, and with, like, I never thought about that, because I would never stack committees in favor of
Yeah.
that, so, but that doesn't mean the next person.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right.
I was
So-
one of the committee members that brought that up at the meeting because it just felt like, well, what's the purpose, as Rita was saying, of having this committee if, we can say no and then the whole council gets to vote on it anyway. But Randy did a very good job of bringing, other things to light that I didn't think of at the time. So I, with Rita, would say that.
Yeah, and I haven't seen, since I've been on the council, I haven't seen anything like that yet, except
There
that,
was like one handicap sign, or not handicap, no parking sign or stop sign, something, like, our first term together.
okay.
That was
That
the
we
first,
okay.
that was the first time.
I haven't
we
seen like any
voted down.
major,
Nothing major.
things, no, and normally when something passes out of the committee, normally the council takes that under advisement anyway, that it did pass out of committee. If it doesn't pass out, then they take that under advisement as well.
So can I just ask for clarification? So if, let's say, the one we just voted on, if no one here was in favor,
You wouldn't make a motion to enter into discussion, so that's why we ask the questions first. And then if you're like, well, I don't want this to move forward, then stay silent, don't motion.
And then it goes nowhere.
So yeah, if you don't, you need the motion in the second, and then it's gonna go. If you don't, so if there's something that you don't want, the committee doesn't want, you don't get that motion in second. So that's a way of not moving it forward. Or deciding like motion to table this for the next month or something like that. So there's other ways of either stalling it or killing it.
gotcha, okay.
Yes,
So we're just referring to the four committees, main committee, not the subcommittee that was formed for redistricting or any other subcommittee that would be formed. That's
Subcommittee,
mostly advisory. Okay. Not voting out anything, it's not making decisions, it's, well, some decisions, but it's not. Right, it's gotta bring it to the committee.
yeah.
And then it goes to caucus and council.
Yeah, I mean, technically you call standing committees too. I mean, not technically, but they're kind of advisory committees too, because they could pass out of here, go to the council.
Right.
And the full council is the one that gets the say. So this is just, and it would be, we're approving this, we want this to pass, or it passed 2-3. And so we're not, the committee didn't recommend it, and I think the council should take that into consideration, since obviously the committee is ready to do the work. You don't do the work on caucus, at caucus, it should. So, would everybody be in favor of changing that then and doing it to our same system, but codifying that? Like what Rennie's suggestion?
As long as we make it a code, yeah.
So committee reports must receive a motion, a second of the committee, motion and a second. How do I word this? Committee reports must receive a motion and a second. The vote would be an advisory.
well, motion and a second to proceed to the full council.
Yeah,
Because if we don't
as long
get
as adding like the advisory, vote would be an advisory to the council. Or should we just not even put that in?
I don't see the point. I don't see the point, because if it doesn't get the motion in a second, it's not going anywhere, so. we know that in order for it to proceed to the council, it's gotta have that motion, it's gotta have a motion and a second.
And you think that's clarifying enough for people to understand in 10 years? I'm asking, I'm not arguing, just.
And what do you wanna say that the committee's recommendation and your vote is just advisory only?
Yes. All committee reports are advisory. Only votes of the full common council have the power to.
How about the advice, we don't, so how about this, committee reports must receive a motion and a second, the advisory vote would then move on to full council. Would then proceed to the full council.
Yeah, but after motion second, in order to receive discussion and vote. It does just clarifies what goes on, with, like Robert's rules and whatever those things are.
Discussion.
Oh, Roberta's.
Roberto.
So then it would be
Roberta.
committee reports must receive a motion and a second in order to receive discussion and a vote. The advisory vote would then proceed to the full common council. Is everybody okay with that?
Mhm.
Okay, and then the third amendment, this came up because, well, actually came up once before, but then redistricting kind of popped up again there. There are no real rules on the aging process of the local law readings, so we've always done where it's 1 month and then 1 month. There have been times like the redistricting, which we couldn't wait that long to do that. So this kind of gives, and you know, Barbara and I both researched New York law, and they don't really give any specifics either. So this gives us like, what did I write? 1 week, right? There must be at least 1 week between the readings. So that way, next person who has this issue could look and say, okay, we need at least a week, we could make a month, but we could also go to a week. It gives time, because the whole idea of that is for the council to have more time to think about the local laws. So we don't want to do 1 reading and then 2 resolutions later do the second reading and vote. But this gives it a little more clarity to the process.
Okay.
It's probably a separate thing, but when we did the redistricting, that was a public hearing and a vote immediately after. That's different. Was that,
Oh, say that again, it was
we had was it a second reading that we had? No, it was a public hearing and then we went right to a vote.
No, we had a first hearing and a second hearing.
Right.
Public.
The first reading, second reading, then
But they were only like a
public
week apart.
They were exactly a week apart.
Yeah.
We did do a public hearing, but it wasn't that hearing wasn't a statutory hearing. We just did it because we chose to do it.
So so my question is, what was that last meeting? What was the last meeting where there was comments, you know, we had for the many, and then we went right to a vote?
Yeah, well, that was when we have a council meeting, whether it's our regular scheduled meeting or if it's a special meeting.
Public hearing.
We have the
Right,
public comment
okay.
period, and we
All right.
have that no matter what, so that it wasn't a public hearing, it was our public comment,
Right.
because it was a council meeting. Sorry, I didn't understand, and then the
No, I
mayor,
understand. I
yeah,
can't
the
remember
mayor
that.
holds
Yeah, it's
the
a
public
regular
hearing before
Right.
he signs it, which he did that, but that's
Right. Okay.
his thing, not ours.
Yep.
So this would, I mean, our practice would still be the local law reading 1 month, and then the second reading the following one. So we're not constantly scheduling a special council meeting just to pass this quickly, but this gives us a little bit of leeway in case we have to, and we're not scrambling to figure out the answer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
So just clarifying it, but any problems with that one or revisements? I would suggest council rule amendments need to be a super majority vote. I would suggest maybe that we do 3 different committee reports for this, or at least take out the middle one. Only because I've heard I think we should pass the first one and the third one, because those are just nice cleanup ones. I don't know if there'll be issues with that middle one, so if we should isolate that, or just, what was that?
Do like an informal question. Ask people, I'm just saying.
Why don't we just deal with the first and the third one?
Yeah.
And
we
then
can
do a
bring that up
separate committee
later.
report, well, that's what
Bring that
I
up
mean,
at
so
a later
that we
time.
know that the other two will most likely pass, and then the other one we may, so.
Did we get a motion in a second to discuss these?
No,
Well, I was the one that presented this, so I was just presenting,
Oh, no, we were discussing.
yeah.
so how about we put a motion on the floor to discuss?
I was gonna say if we don't, but
And now we can repeat what you said. Okay, so we're going to deal with 1 and 3. We're gonna take out number 2 for later discussion with council members. We can pose the
Well, no, I
question
would
to
say
them.
put it in a committee report, just keep it separate, just in case that one doesn't pass through the majority.
But
supermajority.
could we just do 3 committee reports where it's like?
That's what I suggested
adopt-
first.
Yeah, adopt.
Yeah, that was,
Addition to rule 5, 11, and
Can I put that on, it's a separate committee?
Separate committee.
1, 2, 3.
yeah, sorry, that's what I was suggesting, is doing 3 separate ones. I know, this from, you want me to write one for you?
Well, I need to,
Go
get 2.
right
Oh,
now.
here.
Yeah, the right.
And then this one will be, so it's add resolutions to add to the council rule 511, and then just add that, and I'll go get, you need 2 more?
Yeah. Actually, write out what it is.
that's not allowed.
No,
Can I just SC per attached?
yeah,
Can I do that?
yeah.
Resolution to add rule 5.
Just, you don't even have to say
11.
resolution, just say, adopt, change to rule 511 as per attached. Adopt revision. To rule 5 as per attached. And then you just attach the same sheet to all 3 of the.
So resolution to adopt revision to rule 511
Yeah, I think
as per attached.
Do you have the attach, the change?
It's right here.
I could type up a cleanup.
Yeah, that way I
That's
don't
at least,
have to write out each one of these.
Okay.
So then we'll just attach the amendments to each resolution.
that's fine. Elisa, are you there?
Yes.
I made some changes to what I had sent you for the council rule amendments, so I will retype that and send it to you.
Great, thank you.
And then that will be the per attached for these 3 committee, we're doing separate committee reports for each one.
Okay, Thank you.
So I'll get that to you tomorrow.
thank you.
You have the other 2 committee reports, or you?
Oh, okay.
All right, last one.
if there's something we don't like. Right, and
Agreeing something that is in a
in
committee.
a committee, we don't like it also, let's say read something. She's like, motion to discuss, say a word.
The whole thing.
Or if
And
it
that's
doesn't get a
happened
motion in a second, so
a couple of times.
So like, let's say, Rennie, motion to discuss this in Barbara and others. And read that. was-
Yeah,
it's-
yeah, because the chair typically doesn't motion second, but they technically
Yeah,
can. So,
so
yeah,
that
if
would just-
Bernie brings something for motions and there isn't a second, that's it.
So if I motion to make, Jervis Street into a 4-lane superhighway,
And I don't want to do that.
and nobody says anything, then that doesn't go anywhere. So but that's fine, I mean, it's not people. If got something that you want to consider, talk to us first, too long of a second before the meeting turn.
Okay. Can I read these?
Yeah.
Thanks for everybody's feedback on this.
Yeah, no, can you read my handwriting? Okay, one was first. Okay, this is 40. All right, so resolution to adopt revision to rule 5.11. Council rule amendments as per attached. Okay. One is the resolution to adopt revision to add rule 4.8, council rule amendments as per attached. Resolution to adopt revision to add rule 5.10, council rule amendments as per attached. Any discussion? Motion to discuss. Look at Ricky.
Thank you all for the feedback.
Okay.
It works, make the dream work.
There being no discussion, can I get a motion to accept all three of these resolutions or committee reports? As read.
Yeah,
Motion.
she read them all, that's the time.
Third.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Let's see. Okay, and while these are circulating, we'll move to old business. Julie, are you still there? Still there. Thanks for hanging around. The old business is the operation of a shared bicycle with electric assist, electric scooter. And this was, we talked about this last month and tabled it until this month's laws and rules. I guess, Julie, maybe just, we had asked for, give us an update, we had asked for some quotes. And then you sent us back your response, maybe just reference that, and then we'll go ahead and move forward.
Sure. So subsequent to the last meeting, we were made aware that we're not able to go and just get quotes since it's ARPA funding. We need to go through standard procurement policy, which would be going out to a full request for proposals. So I can't just call around and get quotes. However, there are a plethora of shared bike systems around the country. And so I had Ellie Gartenstein do some research into other municipalities to understand what their costs have been. And so I have that information. I will say that it varies pretty substantially from municipality to municipality. There's a lot of different factors that weigh into it. But as a whole, just to compress, now I had her look at municipalities that were similar in size. So this is not a comparison of like what they do in New York City or what they do in Philly. This is a comparison of municipalities of 50,000 or fewer population. Generally, what was found is that it costs an average of between $1,200 and $4,000 per bike to set up the system. And that would vary based on how the system is set up. And that would mean, you know, it could be, there could be grants, of course, that offset it. It could be based on if you set it up with an advertisement system so that there's advertisements on the bikes or advertisements on the docking stations. That could change that, depending on what the economy of scale is. You know, if there's a certain minimum that a company would want to come in and do. So what we also found was that, and these models at least, the rental, if it was by the hour, it would vary from between $1 and $4 an hour to just get the bike, and then it would be 10 or 15 cents per mile, or per minute rather, per minute after that. So if you were to get a bike up at the plaza and ride your bike to Midtown and stop at Monkey Joe's and go inside and have a coffee for half an hour and then ride downtown, park it at Mariners, you would be paying even when you're sitting at the coffee shop. And so a lot of the systems also have monthly passes, which is discounted. They have annual passes, which is then discounted. But we have lots of different models. But we also found some in other municipalities where they're spending $750,000 to set up a system. So unfortunately, it's really all over the map and there's not a real standard. But looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 locations, which includes Ithaca, a place in Colorado, a place in Ohio, Iowa, South Carolina, and Michigan. Again, it ranged for startup cost per bike from $1,250 per bike up to $4,000. Now, as I stated in the past, or at the last meeting, we have been told that it would probably be like 25 or 30 bikes in our area. So even if we were looking at 4,000 per bike times 25 bikes, we're looking at $120,000, and I have 120 set aside through ARPA. And so, of course, this would all be negotiated. Well, not negotiated. It would go out for proposal, and we would go with the lowest bidder if we went with it. So I have all that information, which I'm happy to share. I also met again with Live Well Kingston and Complete Streets Advisory Council. So I met with Complete Streets last week, and as a whole, they are still supportive of the proposal. We did discuss a few nuances, which included whether or not to include the helmet requirement, whether or not scooters should be allowed in bike lanes. There's a question about the lighting specs on the bikes in relationship to the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law. And there's a question about what private means in terms of parking on private property. So they submitted their concerns in writing, which I have shared with Corp Counsel and Marissa Hanson, who's working with me on this. That was last Wednesday. I met with them, and today at 4:15, I met with Live Well Kingston, and they are still collectively supportive of this proposal. Today, they brought up concerns about making sure that however we set it up, it is accessible So that it's not only just available to folks who have credit cards, but there's also a sliding scale system and also a non-credit card option for entering into the agreement. That the contract would stipulate that we would have training for use of the devices put on the contractor, the operator. They said that scooters should be allowed in the bike lanes. Everyone feels that that is the case. If we allow scooters at all, which they actually didn't feel like we should be actually allowing scooters. They talked about increase, if we're going to be doing this, we should be increasing the portfolio of the types of devices, including a 3-wheel bike, which would be more accessible to folks who might have balance issues. And there was also a representative from the Kingston Land Trust there who brought forward to us the Green Line Management Plan, which is a management plan between the county, the land trust, and the city that stipulates things like hours of parking on and permitted uses on the Green Line, particularly in this case, the Kingston Point Rail Trail. And there are stipulations in there about those things that would need to be referenced. I did ask them what the authorization of that plan is, and that it is not codified. I mean, it's not even signed by those entities. It's sort of a mutual agreement. So, and I'm sure that by now, well, since that is predated newer updates to the New York State vehicle and traffic law, so there's already discrepancies there. So that kind of needs to be revisited. But either way, I told them I was going to be coming here to talk to you all, and you know, we also talked about with Live Well that, and acknowledging your concerns and others' concerns about the timing of this with the recent incidents that have been in the city with pedestrians and cyclists, and that we all acknowledge that those things have happened and will happen, and the importance and how critical it is for us to be addressing that, but that is a separate issue than this operator regulation for shared services for bikes, and that they should both be addressed separately and not necessarily clouding one another. So remember if there's anything else that I wanted to bring up. Again, we've researched lots of different communities, but also, I mean, I would be happy if you were interested in me bringing back a representative to a future meeting from a local bike share within the county, you know, to talk about their experience with it. There certainly are, there's at least one in New Paltz, or two at least. There's one on the campus and there's one in the municipality. I know that there's one in Poughkeepsie, Hudson Valley Bike Share, although that's not our county, but still our region. I could do that. I can bring in someone to talk about safety. I'm happy to bring in folks from Bike Friendly Kingston. I happy to do additional research. I also just want to know if you guys heard anything from your constituents.
Okay, well, let me just make the comment. So I don't entirely agree that the two issues are separate, safety and the sharing of the bicycles, shared bicycles, because we'll be putting more bikes on the road. And so I do think that they go hand in hand as far as public safety is concerned. That's first. Secondly, I would be happy to have someone come in, maybe from Bike Friendly or another other municipality that is actually doing the shared bicycles and talk to us about that experience. At this point, my personal feeling at this point, the timing is big to me. The timing matters to me about, you know, putting more cycles on the road right now. And so I'm just not in favor of that part right there, but that's just me. That's my opinion. But now I'll welcome any other comments or questions. Maybe questions that we may have about it, and then we'll move on to discussion. Yeah.
Julie, I would like to hear from another community bike share program from, like, out of the ones you looked at. I didn't know Poughkeepsie had one, or just, is there one of those local ones that seem the most successful, or would be of most interest to us as like a city, rather than like a campus one or something, and also the scale of it. So we're talking about 20 to 25 bikes. What are theirs like? How? And that's a lot of questions, but.
Yeah, so I don't have the specs in front of me for the Hudson Valley bike share, which is the one in Poughkeepsie, or the one in New Paltz, the ones in New Paltz, but I have the specs in front of me for all the other ones we looked at, including Ithaca, and others and around, just that Ellie found in a brief review. All of them in the period of time that they from when they started till currently, all of them scaled up. Every single one of them started with a smaller number and scaled up, because they all started with like a pilot and then grew. So like Ithaca started with 100, or starting with 100, and their goal is 400. In New York, or in Colorado, they started with 100 manual bikes, and now they have 232 manual bikes and 52 e-bikes. Like, it's all very scalable, but I think that the question you're actually asking is the comparison of scale of what they have compared to what we would have in terms of size. So I'm certainly happy to reach out to those that are within like a 50-mile radius of Kingston, which would be the most comparable, just to see what to get their impression of the program.
Another thing, so I don't know if it's appropriate now, asking you questions, or like, so I wanted to say, kind of drawing on your concern about the safety part. We're going to be having a public hearings possibly on reducing the speed limit, safety issues like that, and how would the bike share with the scooters and the all of that, that make them up, speed of traffic. So where would I just said what I was going to say. Said in the discussion,
Right.
it should be ways.
So is there a question? Yeah. So why don't we just deal with questions right now?
All right.
So does anyone have any questions for Julie?
Well, I do. So Julie, it sounds like you got a lot of good information and feedback from Complete Streets in particular. It sounded like though that's just amending some aspects of the document you gave to us. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. A couple of the some will change and some will not change based on feedback from Corp Council, and based on some interpretation by Complete Streets of what we have here. But it's all related to safety. Their concerns are related to safety.
Okay, so I mean, at the very least, it sounds like we need to get a revised draft of this.
Yeah, what my plan is now is to take the comments that I got from Complete Streets last Wednesday and the comments that I got from Live Well today. And I also gave them get back to me if you have any more comments, follow up. And then I would take those, continue to review those with Corp Council, probably have a dialogue with those two committees to back and forth, their concerns and reconcile them. And ultimately come up with, a 2.0 version of what I have. But the 2.0 version is going to be minimally changed. I mean, it's going to be like either we take out the helmet requirement or we don't. You know, the light distances might have to be like 300 feet instead of 500 feet instead of 300 feet. You know, whether people are allowed on the sidewalk or not might change, but it's not going to change the substance of it. But yes, it will change the actual narrative of it, but the principle of it will not change.
Great, thanks.
Barbara.
Julie's, you know, I know when we make certain changes to traffic or whatever, you know, we have like crash studies, you know, is there any data from any of those bike shares that you know, how safe they are in particular, you know, their particular city? I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm trying to get at like, you know, I always freaked out about city bikes, you know, people zooming around with no helmets and, you know, they're using a bike, they're borrowing, you know, they're taking a bike, they might not even be a great bicyclist. Is there any data on how safe bike shares are, or we're just doing it?
I don't know that there's going to be data on how safe bike shares themselves are. I'm sure that there's data on individual accidents between people who are riding a manual bike and a vehicle, or an e-bike and a vehicle. But the reality is this legislation doesn't change whatsoever an individual from personally owning an e-bike and doing whatever they want with it.
Right.
So I wouldn't be able to parse out that information. I mean, I can look, but I can't imagine that there's any. I mean, I suppose there could be data where somebody did before we had bike share, this was our crash statistics, and after we had a bike share, but that probably is going to be hard for me to find, but I can look.
I don't know if it's worth it, but because if they're having them and they're getting more bikes, they must be working. So.
Any other questions or no? No, so I'm sorry, you had the hand up. I'm sorry, scratching.
We should make a rule, but.
So can I suggest that because you're saying we're going to get a revised document. A couple of us have asked maybe for someone to come in and talk to us a little bit more about the bike sharing program. Can I suggest that we table this for another month until we get that information and then we move forward?
Do we want somebody from Complete Streets to come and talk to us too about?
Yeah, I think the more information that we have, the better.
I did go on that meeting. It was the Complete Streets like sidewalk, I don't know, and you were presenting and it was a great discussion. They're very thorough, I would say, Julie. I mean, I guess that committee tends to be, but it
Well,
was very
maybe
interesting.
they can have that discussion with us as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have to go in as much depth because just like Julie explained a lot to us, she was very organized and good communicator.
So do I need to, always forget. Do I need a motion to take? Okay, all right, so we're going to table this for one more month. By that time, you would have had the revised document to us and maybe have reached out to others who are as familiar with this as you are to come in and present to the laws and rules next month.
Okay. Perfect.
All right, thank you. Thank you for hanging around.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
With the help of those public hearing organizations, let me know.
I'm having another root canal.
Okay, and with that, that's the end.
But before she says anything else.
Motion
End of our meeting.
Ready and
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, thank you guys.
Good night, Alyssa.
They're killing me.
Rennie has volunteered.
Good night.
It's one, two.